The secret science. Am I sure it's a science? Is it not a pseudo? And why is it so secret? Well, it used to be called the occult, which means hidden from view. But I don't use that term anymore because it has too many unusual and wrong connotations to it. Mostly because of the likes of the Catholic Church that drove this information underground. Because as we all know, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was to make you believe that he doesn't exist. Oh yeah, my name's Ryan7. Welcome to The Secret Science. Although this secret science presumably came about with the dawn of the mind of man, the most famously condensed in the arts of some Persian astrologer, astronomer, priests called the Magi, those three chaps that turned up to Jesus' mythical birth. Now, as astronomers, astrologers, what they were doing were taking the heavens and trying to comprehend the cycles of time so that we, as the founding agricultural civilizations, could then know when to plant, know when to plow, know the seasons. This allows these early civilizations to cohere and guarantee to some extent the harvest. But to keep these civilizations together, certain techniques were also employed, which, as the Magi were famous for, they imprinted into the constellations and the meaning of the planets and the meaning of the sun and the moon. What do you mean the meaning of the sun and the moon? That doesn't make any sense. Well, we'll dive into this and we'll see that these ideas, these archetypes, have been placed into the heavens so that we don't forget. Don't forget what? Well, it's the magic that these guys were using to be able to rule civilization. Other such arts, such as alchemy, have actually been called the royal arts. Now, as we know, alchemy uses the metals, which are actually ciphers for the planets, which are again actually ciphers for states of human consciousness, which then takes us all the way to the present time, where magic has actually been degraded into stage magic. All other magic, Harry Potter-wise, is all woo and invented, mostly to discourage those that won't understand from the actual arts themselves. Now, just as with the stage musician, these arts are all based on consciousness. Look, nothing up my sleeves, nothing up these baggy sleeves that a magician would use. But at the same time the magician's having you look here, he's doing something back here. And this distraction of consciousness, this look over here while I'm doing something over here, is the foundation of magic. You ask somebody like Aleister Crowley, a famous modern-ish British magician, what magic is, and he'll tell you something like, magic is the art and science of making change in accordance with the will via the use of hidden energies. I'm about to show you some magic. Any technology of a sufficiently advanced level will appear as magic to those ignorant of its workings. So too, for the magician, they never give away the secret of the tricks. They keep it under the hat. It's the secret itself that is the art. For the stage magician, they know exactly the outcome of the trick. They know exactly what they're doing, but you don't. And by your ignorance of the process, you're entertained and enthralled, sometimes inspired to try and work the trick out. A level up is the con man. Now, the con man takes his mark, lies to them, deceives them, manipulates them, perhaps enthralls them with something that they might want, pretends to give it to them, does the old bait and switch, and then you give them your money and they give you something of absolutely worthless value. We go up a level to the stage of society. The government, those that govern the mind, might want to achieve something without your consent. So they create a problem or a distraction. Look over here, there's something wrong. Oh no, what can we do? What can we do? Please help me, government. Then the government come up with a solution, usually that takes more rights from you and me, in order to presumably help the situation and solve it, which usually is the same as the con trick. So this is the secret science, the science of secrets. Initially to control the populace through their ignorance, propaganda and such things work like this. But also it was a trade secret in that if you let your competitors know, in this case it's the general populace, but if you're a business, anytime you keep a secret is to ensure that you don't level out the opposition by giving them everything you know and putting yourself out of business. Also persecution, the likes of the Catholic Church in medieval times, going around destroying the last of this knowledge via the old witches and wizards around Europe. They then put it into oral traditions and into the bardic stories of, say, the Grail legends, the Grail lore of King Arthur and such, which all contain this science. It was also put into alchemy. Particularly alchemy is good at this. They confuse and manipulate the ideas into gibberish. In fact, the word gibberish comes from a famous alchemist called Al-Jabir, an Arab man whom was particularly associated with contriving and encoding all these things into a gibberish. His name was Geber, so we got gibberish. What other reasons might we have to keep this quiet? Well, initially, so that we don't cast pearls before swine. Give the wrong guys the information and they'll use it for the wrong reasons. Unfortunately, the wrong guys have got hold of the information, and this is why. My mission is not to spread the occult, but to de-occult the occult, so that we can all know. Because one of the worst things that's been done with this information is bedarken, which is the opposite of enlighten. What can be used on the individual, on the knowledgeable individual, to achieve an enlightenment, to raise yourself up out of the shite, can also equally be used to keep you down in it. And unfortunately, as the royal art, this is how it's being used. Okay, great, fantastic. We know that it's manipulation, but how is it all done? Well, it's done through one very simple, specific thing. And it's something that we all share, and it's the way that we're all led around, and that is our imagination. The problem with the imagination is that it doesn't actually reflect reality. I can imagine the rocks behind me, I can imagine this piece of graffiti behind me, but I'm never going to be able to recreate that actual graffiti. I might get it wrong. We all know how bad witness testimony is for crimes and such. So what happens is that the magician, whose power is that of symbols, the magician creates a symbol that stands in for something real and uses that to manipulate you by your imagination. He implants that symbol into your imagination. You believe it, you act on it, you work on it, but it's not real. An example of this: weapons of mass destruction. Tony Blair, the warmonger, says there are weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. We must go there to liberate the Iraqi people and to save ourselves from these awful people with these awful weapons. We knew at the time there were no weapons of mass destruction there. He lied, he manipulated, he cheated, he used your imagination, he used your emotions from that imagination, your want to preserve yourself, your want to do good in the world, your want to combat evil, when it was the evil that was combating you. That magician was manipulating you via the media, via propaganda, via spin, to achieve the result that he wanted via us, via our consent, via our imaginations and emotional manipulation. There is a hierarchy in magic. The 4 symbols of the tarot tell you these: fire, water, air, and earth. Each of these is a level of human consciousness. The fire is the will, the spark of creativity that's in us all. It's the force that drives us to do things. They call it the sexual force because it's that makes you want to do things. Water, the emotions, that environment that we all swim in all of the time. Every thought has an emotional content to it. The air is the mind itself, the dual principle, that there's a positive and a negative to everything. There's oh, it might be like this, but oh, it might be like that. This is the imagination that they're preying on. And then there's the earth, which is the root, your sensation, your sensorial body, your need and drive to eat, to procreate, to live, to shelter, to be entertained. These basic human things are all manipulated via the mind. They give you a symbol that means something that isn't real. You act on it, and then we have our result in the world. This is the definition of magic. This is the definition of poor, evil governance. This is the definition of the tricks of the con man. This is the definition of the tricks of the magician and the sorcerer. What is it that gives magicians such powers over such huge swathes of society? Well, magicians use symbols. They create them and they manipulate them. Take this tree. This tree is actually a symbol of a tree because you're watching it on a video. Only I'm touching the tree. It's not real. It's a symbol of a tree. Your brain takes up the symbols. It might be in a comic book. It might be a drawing. It might be a painting. It might just be an icon. It might just be somebody telling you the word tree and it's conjured up in your brain. So what magicians use are these placeholder symbols, the map and not the actual terrain. They repeat it enough times and eventually you'll believe it. You being the majority of society, the deadheads, the zombies that aren't thinking for themselves without critical thinking skills. So because the human brain uses these archetypal forms, a magician is able to cast a spell, which essentially is a word, because words are also symbols. So he uses a word, which is like a sword, a sword, which cuts and divides reality up into discernible chunks for the brain to be able to comprehend. Whether or not these chunks are real or not is a different matter. So what the magician does is he casts a spell in writing with this sword, with this word, which cuts reality up into chunks. Often, because the sword is dual, it cuts it into a dual nature. You'll have to think about that one. This video's too short. And then he takes these words or spellings or spells, he repeats them for a spell until whomever he's trying to get one over on or manipulate or help succumbs to his manipulations. So here's how I see it. The first magician would have been the shaman characters of the group, the early tribes. They have control over the calendar. They know when the seasons are coming. They know when the equinox and the solstice arrive. Every year, the rituals of the tribe around the campfires endorse and reinforce the ideas of the tribe. The stories are retold. Everybody's brought together. Cohesion is met. Cohesion is brought about within the group. As these first magicians looked up, they imprinted their ideas, the most important things that they'd learned in their short lives, onto the stars, into the stories, so the generations down the aeons might learn exactly what they had known, but only for initiates, because the 7 planets hides the systems of hidden energies. Saturn, for example, is the idea of limitation. It was the furthest planet viewable out in the solar system to the naked eye to ancient man. Thus, time, death, the end, the edge, the box, all limiting factors were associated with this planet, as is fear, which limits the human imagination in panic. This Saturnian effect was used to good effect to keep people away from such knowledge by disguising it with demons and other such Scooby-Doo type masks, which once revealed show there to be nothing so sinister as a man with poor intentions. So these ancient shamanic magicians might well want to manipulate members of the tribe for good or for bad. So to achieve this, the magician or shaman would cast a spell for a spell, rather than go through the usual calendrical days and on the solstice or whatever. They would add their own days in, do their own little invented ritual, add their own little thing to it. Maybe it was everybody support the chief day, maybe it was everybody kill the chief day and support me day. And so he would cast his spell by creating a symbolic form of what he wanted to achieve. He'd hold it at a symbolic time on a symbolic day and repeat it for a spell over and over again until the people accepted the change as normal, as normality, as reality. So in the final analysis, what is the secret science? Well, it's a science of hidden things. In the past, when scientists were called natural philosophers, it was a study of the higher parts of nature, maths, chemistry, physics. These things are innately hidden. The reasons for growth, the reason for the causes of physics are still hidden. It also takes the hidden energies which are used by the human, which are generated by the different aspects of the persona, of the biology and of the mind. And via the mind and the emotion is how they get control over the 7 planets, the 7 chakra, the 7 nerve endings that come from the spine, which produce hormones, which produce you, your emotional states, your actions and reactions. We have a lot less free will than we actually think we do. And by these methods, by these hidden energies, they manipulate and control reality in order to achieve their will. So these are the reasons why you'd be keeping it hidden. You don't want to be casting pearls before swine. Those not worthy of the information shouldn't be getting it, especially when it's so powerful. Equally so, you don't want any evil people getting hold of it because they'll manipulate it and use it for the wrong reasons. Also, you might well be persecuted for it. You don't want to be hunted down and killed for essentially some information that might help preserve your life in other ways. Also, the actual methodology of the secret, the fact that everybody loves a mystery, helps to teach that you really drink it in, you're really excited. It's like, oh, what's this? You're trying to derive everything, so it makes you pay that much more attention to it. But the biggest factor is, if it's not a secret, then the spell doesn't work. If you understand how a magic trick works, then the spell is broken. It's as simple as that. If you understand how that card trick's done, then it's not really magic anymore. It's just a prestidigitation.